Pentagon spokesman John Kirby said the deadline for a full withdrawal by 11th of September was still in place, but the pace may change. Pentagon officials said last week that the withdrawal is about halfway done. Afghanistan has seen increasing violence as the US and NATO prepare to pull out their remaining troops. Over the last month, the Taliban have intensified their attacks and gained control of more than 30 districts. The hardline Islamist group has also seized large quantities of military equipment, according to local media, and killed, wounded or captured dozens of troops. Afghan government spokespeople have denied that the districts have fallen to the Taliban, saying they were evacuated in a tactical withdrawal. It is unclear how many Taliban have been killed or wounded. The Taliban say they have control of the whole northern province of Kunduz, with only the provincial capital retained by the government. Police said the group had encircled the strategically important city, also named Kunduz, the Associated Press reported. A long-standing target, it briefly fell to the insurgents in 2015 before being retaken by NATO-backed government forces. Afghan security forces continue to resist the Taliban push, and recaptured 2 districts in the northeastern province of Takhar on Sunday. The situation in Afghanistan changes as the Taliban continue to conduct these attacks and to raid district centers as well as the violence, which is still too high, the Pentagon spokesman said. If there needs to be changes made to the pace, or to the scope and scale of the retrograde, on any given day or in any given week, we want to maintain the flexibility to do that. We're constantly taking a look at this, every single day. What's the situation on the ground? What capabilities do we have? What additional resources do we need to move out of Afghanistan and at what pace? All of these decisions are literally being made in real time.
Our forces, it's the risks to the future of Afghanistan. We're watching closely what the Taliban will do post the Eid ceasefire. Ideally, they would continue with the reduced violence because it's something that the Afghan people want. But the expectation is that they'll pick up violence in the near term.
Many Afghans tell us, and I'm sure they tell you, they're expecting this summer to be the bloodiest ever.
I haven't heard it described that way. I do expect, and we've seen, a Taliban surge, pressure on different provincial capitals. But we've also, you and I have had this conversation before. This is the time of the Afghan security forces as we move forward. And even as we're retrograding, we are certainly trying to put them in the best possible posture that we are able to.
But the Afghan forces aren't quite ready. They still need you. We see that in one battle after another. Taliban, district by district, getting closer to power.
The Afghan security forces have the capabilities, and they have to hold. That's where we are right now.
Once you leave, if Afghanistan, in the worst case scenario, collapses into civil war, will you feel some responsibility?
As we withdraw the force, we have a set of military orders. There's some military tasks, but I don't want anybody to think that there's also not an emotional piece of this. What we've talked about is you cannot hide the emotional aspect of this, but at the same time we stay very focused on the things we must do in accordance with our orders. Our obligations are one, to make sure our force is protected and that we're able to withdraw coalition forces as safely and as orderly as possible, and at the same time ensure that we leave our Afghan security partners in a position that they're able to pick this up and carry it on. And that's, again, an obligation that we feel not just to security forces, but also to the people of Afghanistan.
You were one of the soldiers on the ground to topple the Taliban in 2001. It must hurt as a soldier that you're leaving and the Taliban are on the brink of returning to power, either through negotiations or the battlefield.
I'm not unique in that sense. There's obviously many nations with many service members that have spent a great deal of time in Afghanistan, and if you ask them what they would like as an outcome, they'd like to see this country come back together and end the decades of violence. But with that thought, make no mistake, there's many of us that just feel an obligation. We are the last rotation, if you will. And as the last rotation, we have an obligation to those that have gone before us. And it's not just those that are back home. It's those that did not make it back home, and we feel an obligation to them, their sacrifices, their families' sacrifice and continued pain, as well as their friends.
Did you fail?
I think as we take a look at this thing, history's going to write this story. The objectives that we set out, I think they'll be evaluated. And I think we really need to take a really honest look at the things that we did not do as well as we wanted to. Certainly there were some victories along the way, but I think history will judge this and the future will tell the rest of the story.
U.S.-led forces ousted the Taliban from power in Afghanistan in October 2001. The Taliban had been harboring Osama bin Laden and other al-Qaeda figures linked to the 9/11 attacks in the U.S. U.S. President Joe Biden says the American pullout is now justified as U.S. forces have made sure Afghanistan cannot again become a base for foreign jihadists to plot against the West. A senior United Nations official warned last year that al-Qaeda was still heavily embedded within Taliban militants in Afghanistan. However, Afghan President Ashraf Ghani says government forces are now fully capable of keeping insurgents at bay, but many believe the withdrawal could cast Afghanistan back into the grip of the Taliban. Mr. Biden has pledged that the U.S. will continue to support Afghanistan after pulling troops out, but not militarily. Writing in the Washington Post on Tuesday, Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan said his country was willing to be a partner for peace in Afghanistan with the U.S., but would not host U.S. bases. He said Pakistan had previously made mistakes by choosing between warring parties in neighboring Afghanistan, and pledged to work with anyone who enjoyed the confidence of the Afghan people. Afghan leaders have long accused Pakistan of supporting the Taliban. The country's cooperation is seen as critical to U.S. withdrawal goals. Mr. Khan said recently that he would absolutely not allow the CIA into Pakistan to conduct cross-border counter-terrorism missions against al-Qaeda, the Islamic State group or the Taliban.